Good evening and welcome to the January 13th, 2025 meeting of the Barnstable Planning Board here at Barnstable Town Hall. We are located at 367 Main Street, Hyannis, Mass. in the James H. Crocker Jr. Hearing Room located on the second floor, and it is 7 p.m. The meeting notice has been previously filed with the town clerk in accordance with Mass General Law. All application materials may be accessed through the planning board website or by contacting Karen Pina at karen.pina@town.barnstable.ma.us or calling 508-862-4064. Notice of recording the meeting will be televised live via Xfinity Channel 8 or High Definition Channel 1072. It may also be accessed via the Government Access Channel live stream on the Town of Barnstable's website, which is streaming85.townofbarnstable.us/cablecast public site. And I will now inquire whether anyone else is recording this meeting, and if so, please make your presence known. Seeing none, we will call the meeting to order this evening and introduce our board members and staff, starting with Matt.
Good evening, Matt Tague.
Michael.
Good evening, Michael Messinas.
Mary.
Mary Barry.
Ray.
Good evening, Ray Sexton.
Tim.
Good evening, Tim O'Neill.
And staff, Jim.
Good evening, Jim Cupford, Director of Planning.
And Karen.
Good evening, Karen Pina, Admin Assistant, Planning and Development.
Thank you all. My name is Steve Robichaud, and we do have quorum this evening. We will start with general public comment. This is for public comment not related to an agenda item this evening. If there's anyone in the public which would like to speak this evening, please come forward. Seeing none, we will move to our first item this evening, which is an approval not required. And Ray, would you like to take this one?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Approval not required plans. Gladstone LP has submitted an approval not required plan entitled Plan of Land, 32 Pleasant Hill Lane, Hyannis, Massachusetts, prepared for Gladstone LP, dated December 6, 2024, revised December 18th, 2024, for approval. This is not a public hearing and does not need to be voted to open or close it.
Excellent, thank you very much. And the board is in receipt of a staff report dated January 13th, 2025, as well as a plan of land. And with us this evening, we have the applicant, Mr. Ojala. Welcome. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Chairman, members of the board. As you stated, Dan Ojala, I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Downcape Engineering in Yarmouthport. And the audience is Aaron Bornstein, who is the son of Stuart Bornstein, Gladstone LP, who is the owner of the property. This is a property which has been in the Bornstein's name for quite some time. We did a development a while back. It's currently assessed as two different parcels, and we recently went through and had the wetlands delineated and adjudicated by the Conservation Commission, and so kind of a housekeeping item was to combine those two pieces together so that would be properly one perimeter of the lot. Mr. Bornstein has an eye towards providing a little bit of housing on this site, but that's not directly related to why we're here. Why we're here is to combine the two parcels. Jim had us put a special note in the plan just indicating so it's a little bit clearer for the permanent record where those two parcels are. The eastern parcel is on Stevens Street. The western parcel is the main tract, and they're to be combined together into one large parcel. And so it's, I guess in some ways, much ado about nothing, but it is a perimeter plan which deserves endorsement. Pleasant Hill Lane is a public way. It's paved. It has adequate frontage, which is the key component that you folks look at. And it meets all the current zoning requirements for that district. So it can be endorsed properly as approval not required, and we sure would appreciate that. That'll let us assess it as one parcel and be a little bit cleaner for future permitting. Be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Thank you very much. Yeah, this was an interesting one. It took me a little bit to find that small line between parcel B and parcel A. And I had not even realized that parcel 22 did not have the frontage on Stevens Street. So it's an interesting layout. Yeah. Certainly all seems to be in order. We're going to go through and see if the board has any questions first. Jim, do you have anything to add for this one?
No, nothing further for this one.
All right, thank you. Board members, Matt, anything?
No, thank you.
Michael?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
Mary?
All set.
Ray?
No questions here.
Tim?
All set, thank you.
Okay, excellent. And just a reminder, Ray, on this one, any motion needs to read the findings located on page 2 of the staff report.
All right, Mr. Chairman, thank you. So I move to endorse the plan of land 32 Pleasant Hill Lane, Hyannis, prepared for Gladstone LP, prepared by Down Cape Engineering, last revised December 18th, 2024, as an approval not required plan.
All right, and we've got a couple. Sorry, we've got a couple findings, if you could read those on page 2.
Right.
Just say with the following findings.
The plan as submitted qualifies as approval not required plan and should be endorsed by the board as it does not constitute a subdivision because each of the lots have the minimum required frontage on an existing way, having suitable grades and adequate construction to provide for the needs of vehicular traffic in relation to proposed use and for the installation of municipal services to serve such use, or has been labeled as not buildable, and all materials and conditions of Chapter 801, Article 4, approval not required plans have been submitted and are in full compliance.
Thank you very much, Ray. Well done. And do we have a second?
Second it.
All right, thank you, Michael. All those in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. The matter passes. Mr. Ojala, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. We're going to move on to our second item on this evening's agenda. See Mr. Ojala sticking around. Let's see, we've got an approval not required plan for
And
Cobb
Mr. Ojala,
Trust.
welcome back.
Yes.
Easy
Indeed.
commute.
I'll read this one in. So Cobb Trust has submitted an approval not required plan entitled Plan of Land at 87 Oakmont Road, Barnstable, Mass., prepared for Cobb Trust, and that's dated December 2024 for approval as an A&R plan. And again, the board is in receipt of a staff report dated January 13th, 2025. Mr. Ojala, welcome back. If you could give us an overview on this one as well.
Sure. Again, for the record, Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor, civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport. And this is a pretty straightforward redivision of Lot 4, which is shown on Plan Book 704, page 7. That's an A&R plan which divided up the Cobb Trust lot. This is a lot held by the Cobb Trust for the school children of the town of Barnstable. They'll be getting the benefit of the, when these lots are sold. That's a nice Cobb Trust, if you look it up, is a very nice entity. And Steve Heslinger, who is the current trustee, feels that investing the monies would be the best way to go here, and so we're dividing off some excess property. In looking at it, there's a swimming pool with a fence on the current owners are Eric and Kelly Band, and it looks like that fence has been there a while, so rather than argue about it, we figured we'd cut off a little piece, which would have the pool equipment and fence, which has been there for some time, cut off from the main tract, which is very oversized. You're allowed acre zoning in this area, 43,560. It's 83,000 left over after giving up a little 151 square foot parcel. So when these plans come in, you look for a note. It clearly has a zoning violation on 4B. And so instead of calling it a lot, which has a specific legal term, we call it a parcel. And so the note in the plan, which allows you to endorse it, states that parcel B is for conveyance purposes only and is not a lot as defined in the subdivision control law, and parcel 4B is to be conveyed to the abutting property at 544 Marston's Lane, which is currently held by Eric and Kelly Band, a young couple that lives in that area. So being that the remnant lot 4A completely meets zoning in terms of especially frontage, which is what you focus at, you're required to have, you're allowed panhandle zones in this area, so we have a 20-foot minimum. You've got over 40 feet on a public way, and you also might just take a weather eye to look, make sure you've got the 43,560. You've got almost twice that, and shape is shown to be well within the 21. It's 18.5 with a shape of 74,000 square feet. So you don't need to concern yourselves with the zoning issues. Sometimes if you have presented with a plan which shows an obvious zoning violation, you might send a note to the building commissioner just as a heads up that you've endorsed a plan that doesn't look like it meets zoning, but here it fully does. We're just cutting off one little piece. still meets shape, still meets area, still meets frontage, and we're kind of keeping peace in the valley there with the neighbor. So I'll be glad to answer any questions. We feel this doesn't deserve endorsement. The staff report looked robust, and I'll be glad to answer any questions if you have them.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Again, we've got our staff report, we've got our plan of land dated December 31st, 2024. We've got two items of correspondence that came through. The first was from Karen Zupko at 39 Salt Rock Road in Barnstable, and the second was from Donald and Deborah Reynolds, 516 Marsden's Lane in Comaquid. One of them referenced a request for to table this item. I just wanted to state that we have a statutory requirement to deal with A&Rs in a timely fashion, and we intend to do so this evening. Any questions or comments from the board? Matt?
No, thank you.
Michael?
I'm all set, thanks.
Mary?
All set, thank you.
Ray?
Just a quick question. So this is strictly, there's, what, a outbuilding or something there that, basically, they're just, as you said, they're accommodating a young couple to make it officially on their...
Yeah, there's a pool fence that goes around the pool, so the pool isn't over, but the pool fence is in a corner of the heating, ace, maybe it's a pool heater, and pump is over a little bit. You can see, if you look carefully near the 1.7 and 30.17 that's drafted in there. So that's just gonna, when we convey that piece, then everything will be on their land.
Okay.
You might concern yourself with, a lawsuit if somebody slipped and fell and it wasn't, it was on our property, not theirs. You're gonna list everybody as additionally insured. So it's cleaner just to cut it off and give it to them. And in that manner, we feel that, will be cured the easiest and cleanest possible way. And it's my understanding, I haven't spoken to them directly, but Steve Hesling said that they were in agreement with taking that parcel, and that would, they'd clean it up.
Okay.
And they'd be fine with that. And just in reference to those notes, it's important for the people, they're very welcome to hire surveyors and check everything out, but there's a subdivision to the east, the Marston's Lane loop, and we actually held that subdivision for our control, and we found multiple monuments that were within fractions of an inch of being perfectly on that line. So you can survey it. You're going to have 100 different surveyors could survey it, but they'll find it's the same line. So there's just no question about it. They're welcome to check my work, but we're licensed and insured, and it is correct. Thank you.
Okay, that's fine. And, it's 151 square feet. It's not like a bunch of trees are going to be cut down and houses built or anything like that.
Yeah, for this little piece, we're just preserving a little encroachment, curing a little encroachment
Yeah.
of 544 onto the Cobb Trust parcel. These lots may well be sold and have individual houses on them, but they're all oversized lots, and
Yeah.
they're bigger lots than
But
the
this little
neighbors.
piece has
This is a
nothing to do
nothing
with it.
burger. It's just a conveyance parcel, and it can be properly endorsed. It's going to be combined with the 544 Marston's Lane.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ray. And Tim, anything?
No questions, thank you.
Okay, I'm all set as well. Jim, anything to add?
No, nothing to add.
All right, thank you very much. I'd look for a motion on this, and just a reminder, again, as an A&R, a motion needs to include reading of the findings found on the back side on page 2 of the staff report.
Mr. Chairman, I would move that we endorse the plan entitled Plan of Land, 87 Oakmont Road, Barnstable, Mass., prepared for Cobb Trust, prepared for the Enoch Cobb Trust by Down Cape Engineering, last revised December 31st, 2024, as an approval not required plan, subject to the following findings. It does not constitute a subdivision because each of the lots have the minimum required frontage on an existing way and have suitable grades and adequate construction to provide for the needs of vehicular traffic in relation to the proposed use and for the installation of municipal services to serve such use, or has been labeled as non-buildable. And all materials and conditions of Chapter 801, Article 4, approval not required plans have been submitted and are in full compliance.
Thank you very much, Matt. Well done. In a second.
This is Tim, I'll second.
Thank you, Tim. All those in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Matter passes. Thank you very much.
Sure. Yeah, those are pretty straightforward, but thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, moving along to our next agenda item, we have a zoning amendment. And Mary, would you like to read the zoning amendment we've got here?
This is a zoning amendment number 2025-060. This is amending the code of the town of Barnstable, Part 1, General Ordinance, Chapter 240, Zoning, to revise the definition of accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and to revise the use and dissemination, dispersion? Yeah, requirements. Floor area definition and clarify parking restrictions and non-owner occupying requirements for ADUs.
Excellent, thank you very much. And this is as a zoning amendment. This is a public hearing, so I'd like a motion to open the public hearing.
Second.
Ray, can you just turn your mic on? Sorry.
Second.
All right, moved by myself, seconded by Ray. All those in favor? Michael?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Ropeshot, votes aye. The public hearing is open. And I'm going to turn it over to Jim Kupfer to give us an overview of what we're looking at here.
Yeah, hi, good evening, everyone. Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning and Development, just reviewing the accessory dwelling unit zoning amendment. So as a typical zoning amendment, this first goes to Town Council. Town Council has referred this to the Planning Board for recommendation. This originates from the Affordable Homes Act that the state recently passed that allows for accessory dwelling units across the Commonwealth. With certain provisions. This isn't a dramatic change for Barnstable, as that the town of Barnstable was somewhat ahead of much of the Commonwealth in allowing for accessory dwelling units throughout our community. However, since the new law has passed and will be enacted on February 2nd, the staff has reviewed the proposed changes from the state and its consistency with our local ordinance, and has found some changes that are necessary in order for us as the town to be consistent with the law. So the Affordable Homes Act changes the definition of an ADU under Section 1A of Chapter 40A of the general laws to clarify that the maximum size of an ADU is no more than half gross floor area of principal dwelling, which that is key because that is different than how the town of Barnstable measures the size of an accessory dwelling unit. And that it maintains a separate entrance, either directly from the outside or through an entry hall, or corridor shared with a principal dwelling, sufficient to meet the requirements of the state building code for safe egress. The town currently has a provision similar to that, and I believe we're in compliance there. The new law also amends, the new law requires that towns may not prohibit owner occupancy requirements, and to require that no more than one additional parking space shall be required for an accessory dwelling unit. However, this section was further amended to require no additional parking if you are 0.5 miles from a commuter rail station, subway station, ferry terminal, or bus station. Thinking of the town of Barnstable, yes, the wave down bus counts, so those routes count. The ferry terminals count, the transportation center counts. So those are all things that you would consider that the parking requirements would not be required. It does also allow for a special permit provision for if you want one addition or more than one accessory dwelling unit on a single-family residential, within a single-family residential zoning district. So these are all the potential changes, or the changes the state is requiring. So between the Planning and Development Office, Building Commissioner, and the town's legal department, we have reviewed our local zoning ordinance and offered these changes to be consistent with the law. You also have in your package the red line version that shows those changes, but these are simply, again, to be consistent with the state requirements that will be in effect on February 2nd.
Purple line version.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, purple line version. So, there's not that many changes here. Jim, I appreciate that explanation. That was very clear. Barnstable led the way. We were heavily involved with the original ADU ordinance, and I thought that we all did a great job with that, and that was really an asset to the town when that was put in. I think it is kind of nice that there is a path for people to potentially have more than one ADU through a special permit process. Jim, my question on that was just how is the jurisdiction of that special permit issuance determined? Is it just based on the geography of the site?
Special permit is required for any applicant seeking more than one ADU, and that would be through the zoning board of appeals.
Got it, okay. All right, and then just speaking about, separate entrance, clarifies gross floor area rather than habitable. Talks about, again, no parking needed if located half a mile from commuter rail station, subway station, et cetera. And that's really it. There's not a ton of changes here. Certainly I'm in favor, but let's just go around and get our thoughts. Jim, go ahead.
Just one more towards the very end. The use of land or structures for an accessory dwelling unit shall not require owner occupancy of either the accessory dwelling unit or the principal dwelling unit. Just want to make sure that's highlighted, because
That's the big one.
That's somewhat substantive for the town of Barnstable. We currently require one of those units, whether that's the ADU or the primary, be owner occupied, but that is no longer allowed through the state law.
Yeah, and certainly I preferred it the way we had it originally, but obviously with the state instituting this law, we've got to come into compliance with it. So, Matt, anything to say on this one?
The only, I think at the state level, and Jim, you may be aware of this, they're currently finalizing rules and regulations here, and there is in my following of it, the debate is whether we use the term habitable or gross living area, right? So I understand the need to do either, but as long as we define either of those very clearly in the zoning bylaw, right? So if we're going to use the term habitable space, and I'm not sure people understand what the difference is between that and gross floor area.
Could you tell us if you don't
Sure,
mind?
absolutely.
Yeah, thank
So
you.
under the building code, right, so habitable space is considered heated living space that has a ceiling height of 7'6" or more. Okay, so if you imagine like a sloped attic where you've come off into the corners, if you were going to ask someone to calculate how many square feet of habitable living space are in that room, they could only draw a line down the center of that room where that ceiling height is 7'6". Okay, it also excludes bathrooms, cooking facilities, cabinetry,
Mechanical
right?
rooms.
So. My preference would be to see the term habitable remain. It allows people to have 900 square feet of living space, and imagine it under the current building code, where we're required to have 2x6 walls, basically to meet to cost effectively meet the outrageous insulation requirements we have. On a 10-foot wide room, that room's 9 feet on the inside, right? Just for wall thickness, right? So in my following of the issue at the state level, there are a number of groups, architectural groups, the Home Builders Association, and otherwise pushing to leave the habitable space term in there. Either one we end up doing, we need to very, very clearly define that, right? It's because when I permit a project or look for certain zoning guidance, if they use a term like gross living area, any term like that, I immediately look for a definition, right? And it has to be. It just avoids, it provides a level playing field of interpretation for those who are pursuing a permit, right? It's very easy to go, it's habitable space as defined under the building code, or it's gross floor area to be calculated as such, right? So other than that, I don't see anything dramatic here. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate that. Definitely was a good education for me. Jim, do you mind talking about kind of the difference between those two terms and what option we have? I mean, are we kind of backed into required to use the word gross?
Right, so that's what the state uses right now, but to Matt's point, there are comments, there's a comment period that ended with a hearing, I believe it was last Friday.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
That took in those comments. So, again, this activity is to match that of the state's requirements. So we are continuing to monitor that. If the definition were to change, we could certainly bring that forward. But right now, that gross floor area is as defined by the law. And so right now, that's how it's reflected. You could certainly make a recommendation to the town council that, if that is something you would like to just continue monitoring, and if it changes, for them to consider that change, you could certainly make that recommendation. And we could insert whatever is enacted by the law, essentially. But right now, it is gross floor area.
Okay, fair enough. Appreciate that. Michael?
I'm all set, thanks.
All right, Mary?
I'm all set, but I was just thinking about what Matt was saying. Can we put the verbiage in there that states something along the lines that following the state code, right? I mean, instead of us, I guess the question would be is are we going to go against what the state is telling us to do, right? Probably not,
If we leave it as habitable.
right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the two paths I see before us, one is to simply continue it to allow that conversation to wrap up, or recommend zoning amendment as amended with the following caveat, you know.
Yeah, to follow the state's recommendation or
Right.
terminology.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's probably the safest way to do it. I mean, I believe the.
Yeah, right.
The
right,
state, the state changes to 40A do use the term gross.
Yeah.
Right? But that's a nuance, and it's, we just need to
It'll
define it.
probably have come
Yeah.
out on
Yeah,
Friday's
yeah.
comments.
Yeah, all the ones I saw, that was like repeated like over and over and over again.
Okay, okay.
I was just going to, Matt, I just wanted to ask you so the gross area would be the larger number and habitable would be the smaller, wouldn't it?
No. So let me put it this way. A building that has 900 square feet of gross floor area, which is the area inside the walls.
Yes.
Right? A heated area inside the walls. That, if that were to measure exactly 900 square feet, right, then that's what you get. You take a tape, you measure wall to wall, this room's this big, this bathroom's this big. A house that has 900 square feet of habitable space could be 1,100 square feet in gross floor area, right? Because, for instance, the cabinetry, right? So the cabinets come out 2 feet off the wall. That is not considered habitable space, right? That is part of the gross floor area, right? The gross living area, but it is not habitable space. So habitable gives you 900 square feet of space to live in, excludes things like bathrooms. Right, so you could very easily have a house with 1,100 square feet of gross floor area
With a.
with 900, capped at 900 of living area. Right.
Habitable.
Correct.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I think you just said yes a different way.
Right.
Yes, so given a set area, gross would cover the entire area. Habitable would probably cover a portion of that area unless there's a uniform ceiling over it.
No, a building that with how do I say this? Usually, if you talk about the mass and volume of a structure, right? A building with 900 square feet of habitable living area, habitable space, would be larger than a structure that had 900 square feet of gross living area,
Gotcha.
right?
Yep.
Because you get
Yeah.
to exclude the bathroom, so that bathroom has occupies space that's not part of the calculation for the building department, that it could be bigger.
Right.
Theoretically, you could build a bigger master bathroom that's 120 square feet, and the thing could very easily go over 900 square feet of gross floor area, right?
Right.
So,
But it would be not, if you did habitable, it would be less, because that bathroom is not,
under habitable space, the bathroom's effective value is 0,
yes,
not counted.
right.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, and what's interesting about this, just looking a little bit closer, is there's when it switches from the two habitable to gross, those are in reference to the ADU, but it still leaves
I was going to say.
the habitable in there,
It
saying that-
refers back to the habitable on the main
e-
house.
exactly.
Right.
It's 50% of the main house or 900 square feet,
Well,
whatever's
the-
bigger. So it refers in this bylaw.
Habitable floor
to habitable
area
on
of
one
the main
area.
house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right, so I guess my point is we need to define, do we define gross living area in the, well, let me use the exact term, I'm sorry, I don't want to misspeak here. The,
Gross floor area.
well, yeah, if we were to define gross floor area in the zoning bylaw, then it's not a question, right? Right, so that's something we should look at doing as part of this, because that saves people from towing the line on something that it shouldn't be, right? And if we're going to use the term habitable space, then we should define habitable space in reference to the state standard on habitable space through the building code.
Yeah.
Because they're just clear definitions, and you don't want somebody building, so to your point, Ray, we don't want somebody building a building with 900 square feet of habitable space with a 1,200 square foot master bathroom. Right, that's a 2,600 square foot house. Okay.
Yeah, I just made a note here, if you guys like this language, just saying that, we could recommend the zoning amendment with the caveat that floor area, whether that's gross or habitable, is clearly defined by the zoning.
Yes, correct, yeah.
Okay, understood.
So we just include that in the motion, right?
Yeah, exactly, and I'm happy to make that motion when the time comes.
Right.
Ray, anything else from you?
Nothing, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay, excellent. Tim?
No, I think Matt covered the comments on the, habitable versus gross. My only question actually for Jim, because currently the process in the town of Barnstable's previous ADU bylaw and with the state is to see the ZBA for a special permit if over 900 square feet, but under 50% square foot of the main structure habitable. What has been the kind of temperature on the town's ZBA with those special permits for any that have come over, maybe just over 900 square feet or above? Have they mostly passed? Have there been drag-outs on any of those, or?
It does vary, and obviously each application stands on its own. However, historically, the zoning board has certainly considered ADUs within existing structures that may be above 900, but has taken a somewhat hard stance on new build that's above 900. That's just in their past practice over the last year or so, but obviously each application stands on their own.
Okay. Yeah, 'cause I think I heard a story that there was one in town that there was like a 910 square feet new build ADU that got denied a special permit. I don't know if that's true or if there's been a few of those, but I don't know if there's a way to kind of put in there if there's a way to have an admin approval for if it's less than a certain percentage or something like that, because I think people, especially designing and permitting these with the definition that it's a gross area and trying to fit it all in, and somebody designed something at 908 square feet, I don't think they should get denied a special permit. But I don't know if there's a way to have the verbiage here in the zoning to kind of allow that, unless you have an idea, Matt.
I have one. Tim brought up a good point, right? So I'm going to read section 4, okay, and understand the conversation we just had about habitable versus gross floor area, right? So in general, homeowners, when they'll look at what the assessor's department has for living space in the house, okay? If you were to, under paragraph 4, and I'll read the red line version, an ADU shall contain no more than 2 bedrooms. ADUs, in accordance with the definition, shall have a minimum gross, that's the revised term, floor area that is not larger than half of the habitable floor area of the house. Now, if I walk in with my 1,800 square foot house, and I go to the building department and say, I want to build a 900 square foot gross floor area unit, Mr. Florence is going to look at me and go, well, the habitable area of your 1,800 square foot house is 1,640 square feet. You can only build 820. So if we're going to use gross, then we use gross across the board. If we're going to use habitable across the board. But I wouldn't mix and match.
Start mixing and matching.
Yeah, I mean, the path of least resistance would be to change the third line there, half of the gross floor area. That way, people aren't shocked when they come out and find that somehow X square feet of their house evaporated by a change in a definition, okay? So that'd be, so under paragraph 4, the habitable after the half should be changed to gross, if we're going to go that way for now.
Well, yeah, actually, I mean, if all the verbiage throughout the bylaw is for gross, and say the state, does take an adoption of 40A, moving it all to habitable, then it's at least an easy swap on this again, to move everything together to habitable.
If we're going to be wrong, we're going to be consistently wrong. It's easier that way.
Yeah, so I just, sorry, Jim, just real quick while I have it on my mind, I just added a note that says, so again, recommend a zoning amendment with the one condition that floor area, whether gross or habitable, is clearly defined by the zoning, and section 4 is consistently gross floor area or habitable floor area throughout section 4 of the ordinance.
Correct. Yep.
Okay. Sorry, Jim.
No, it's excellent, and I entirely agree with Matt's comments there. Just to note that the red line changes are to be consistent with the state law. So yes, if you do see things in there that you want to consider changes, we made a cognitive effort to not make any amendments to our local ordinance that isn't required by law.
So, Jim, if I could just ask, so does the state law use that language? I don't have it in front of me. That the floor area is not larger than half of the habitable floor area of the dwelling unit? I guess it would just from a consistencies perspective, whether that's in compliance or not, I think if we're going to do gross, we do gross, right? Everything's gross, and that way there's no, the calculation's a little confusing, I think, for the general public.
Yeah, to my understanding, this matches the state's definition, but we will confirm that, and we
Okay.
can.
But the language where they would use gross in one place and habitable.
Oh, sorry, your mic. Yeah.
The use of both terms in the same paragraph like that, where it's half gross for the ADU and habitable for the single family?
It may be by design. That may be how they want it. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, as Matt pointed out, it would probably be a smaller number.
I mean, certainly there's nothing wrong with our board recommending to town council that section 4 has consistent language. I mean, town
That
council
would
can make
be
the
my
ultimate decision.
suggestion.
Yeah.
This as it's written now, using gross for the ADU and habitable for the main dwelling unit, is results in the smallest units.
Right.
Right, if you think of the
Right.
math behind it, the way this is written, it results in the smallest units.
Yeah.
If we're going to do all gross, then it's a fair shake. Basically, you look at what the assessor says you have, you know, and you divide it by 2, and you go, okay, great, I can do a 750 square foot unit. Very
Right.
simple math.
Yeah.
Right? We want to make this accessible for everyone. I mean, the whole idea is to build a bunch of these,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah,
So.
definitely.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we've heard from the board. Now, this is a public hearing, so we're going to turn to members of the public. If anybody would like to speak, Mr. Ojala, if you'd like to come up to the microphone, I see your hand up. Just press the mic on and state your name for the record.
Sure, Dan Ojala, I live in Comaquid. Gross floor area, is there a very good definition on that? Because I would tend to think that would be out to out on, when I see gross, I go to the outside wall, but
Correct.
do some people say the inside of the walls, or?
So
I
you
mean,
use the
floor
term-
is in there.
You use the term floor area, and I may have misspoke. There's gross living area and gross floor area. They all have different definitions. My suggestion is that we create a definition that we use in the bylaw. You're correct. I think that gross would be out to out, right? Face a wall.
Sometimes,
Yeah.
you know, at least that's the way I, like when we do, well, condo plans are different animals, but I think generally speaking, real estate agents like to call houses bigger, and they'll use the gross, you know, overall square footage when they talk about, you know, some aspects. The living space that's that's listed, like say that's a little over 1,800 of living space, that would generally mean that you can do about up to a 900 square foot ADU right now. I'm actually considering doing one at my house, so it's a very interesting to me. I can't imagine, well, the lot prices are out of this world right now. But the other thing that I found rather nice with the current regulation is that they allow an attached garage for free. Is that going away, or do you think we can keep that in there without running afoul of the state law?
I think that's still in here, because it
that's
does
not-
list as an exclusion to that.
Unfinished attics, unfinished
Unfinished attics,
basements,
unfinished basements,
garages.
garages. Yeah, that's,
Change there. Are we right about that, Jim? No change there?
That's correct. No change there.
Nice. So that's, I think, important because, you know, as you know, homeowner storage is, you know, a very, very precious thing, and 900 square foot is very small. So to have a little bit of attic storage and a little bit of basement storage and maybe a one-car garage is very nice. So, good. Well, I'm pleased that survived. I was concerned that it wouldn't. Yeah, however you land with the gross floor area. But it does strike me that the impetus of the state is to make sure that, to drag kicking and screaming all the towns that didn't do what you guys did into what you're doing. If you're a little bit more generous, I can't see why we should be penalized by a new regulation. So I would think either by special permit or by, you know, practice, if we were to allow a little bit more generous calculations, maybe backing out some of the things, that still meets the spirit and intent of the rule. And, the other towns that don't like it can be a little more hard-nosed with a 900 square foot, but, we do have a housing crisis, and in areas that can support it with a septic or on sewer, and there's adequate room, I think they make a lot of sense. So I'd urge you to be as generous as you can with those floor areas, because housing is very tight right now in the Cape. Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you very much for your comments. Anybody else from the public would like to speak, please come on down. Public hearing. Okay, seeing none, why don't we go ahead and close the public hearing? I move to close the public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Matt. All those in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Public hearing is closed. So again, the motion that I've come up with is, I'm not making the motion right now. I'm just going to do practice run here. Recommend zoning amendment, town council item number 2025-060 as presented, with the one condition that the floor area, whether gross or habitable, is clearly defined by the zoning, and section 4 is consistent with either gross floor area or habitable floor area throughout section 4 of the ordinance. So what do we think about that? We all right with that?
Yes.
It's fine.
I'd say
Okay.
using the term or something like that.
Hold on.
Consistent.
Clearly defined.
Consistent in using.
Is consistent in using. Yep. Great. Any final comments? Okay. Jim, anything to add before we go to, okay. All right, I move to recommend zoning amendment, town council item number 2025-060 as presented, with the one condition that floor area, whether gross or habitable, is clearly defined by the zoning, and section 4 is consistent in using gross floor area or habitable floor area throughout section 4 of the ordinance. Do we have a second?
Sam, a second.
All right, thank you, Tim. All those in favor, Matt?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye, and that matter passes. Okay, moving on to general business. This is a minor modification request that has been submitted by Waterside Engineering for special permit number 2023-02 for 810 Wakeby Road in Marston's Mills, Mass., submitting a minor modification to the plan. This is not a public hearing, does not need to be voted open, close. So we all know, in our experience with regulatory agreements and subdivisions, that an applicant has an opportunity, a right to come before us and ask for a modification. It's our job as a planning board to decide whether or not that modification is considered minor or major. It's different between regulatory agreements, subdivisions, and special permits. They're all a little bit unique. For a special permit, what delineates between a minor modification and a major modification is whether or not the modification is substantially in conformance with the original approved plan, or if it is not substantially in conformance. Obviously, if it's substantially in conformance, we would consider that a minor modification. If we feel it's not substantially in conformance, it would be a major modification. Now, minor modification is simply handled by the planning department. Jim, as the director, would simply make an administrative approval on that modification and handle it in-house. A major modification would require a hearing notice and an open public hearing here at Town Hall in front of the planning board. So that's what we're talking about this evening, all right? And before I go to the applicant, Jim, do you have anything to add?
No, phenomenal job.
Well,
Nothing to add.
you explained that to me earlier. So. All right, and we have the applicant with us here this evening. State your name for the record and give us a little presentation.
Great. Good evening, Mr. Chair, Planning Board. My name is Robert Rosine from Waterstone Engineering. I'm here to represent Standard Solar and EDF, Standard Solar, the owner, and EDF, the developer for the 810 Wakeby Road project. I was not the engineer that was involved in the original permitting. That project, I believe, was permitted in August of 2023, was the final approval on that. I'm the civil engineer of record for the developer, for the owner, overseeing the construction. With that, the project is actually underway. It's a fast timeline. So the substance of whether this is a minor modification, major modification, public hearing, et cetera, is actually quite important for us. So with that, I'd like to just quickly review or go over what we're requesting here, which is, I believe, obviously for you to determine, I believe substantially in compliance with the original approval. So what is being proposed here is a shortening of the road. So let me zoom in on the no, wrong computer here. Let's see. Actually, I don't know if I can zoom in on that. So
There is a plus in the, there's a plus minus in the top left. And the percentage there.
oh, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one right there.
Beautiful.
Wonderful. Thank you.
It'll take it a minute to refresh.
Okay, while we're waiting for it to refresh. So essentially what we're looking at here is primarily just a shortening of the road. So if you imagine the site as four sides, the original approval wrapped the access road all the way around to the back of the project. So that was roughly a 2,000 foot road to the rear of the project. And what this does is essentially just shorten it by about 800 feet, brings it to the third side as opposed to the far rear. What it really is this request is largely for two reasons. It's out of logistics and simplification. So logistics, meaning to drive into the site and now turn around, requires only going approximately halfway around the project, as opposed to having to go all the way around to the rear of the project. So the logistical aspect of shortening the road kind of simplifies the overall build, and then really the economics of the shorter build all the way around. So what that does is it enables a shortening of the final equipment pad that would have been around that additional 800 feet, which would have been in the rear. So everything is pulled a bit further out. So I would assume, as we're waiting for this to load here, that the major concerns would always be concerns for abutters, and then concerns for the various departments, particularly fire access with respect to public safety. And so for those, I'd like to mention.
You good? You can keep
Okay. With those, let's start with public safety. The initial, we can just leave it like that. That's okay. So this red line here, what you can see here is essentially the array has changed, not at all. The stormwater management has changed, not at all. There's a large, I'm blanking on the word. There's a berm with screening. There we go. Vegetative screening that's roughly 2,000 feet long. Nothing about that changes. Simply, it's the shortening of the road from here, and I'm going to count it back. It's approximately 800 feet to the end of the road would be here. And the prior equipment pad would have been at the very end. It has now been moved to this location.
What equipment is that?
That is
use
the
your mic.
electrical pad that would have held transformers, inverters, things of that sort. And so from a fire department access where we had been prior, the furthest distance to a pad, to a panel for the fire department to access would have been about 420 some feet. And that would have been measured from where my cursor is here, I believe, to this location here. So this would have been approximately 400 feet maximum distance. And now what we're looking at would be approximately 500 feet maximum distance would be from here to about here. So in terms of fire access, it's a little bit longer, but I'm not going to speak for the fire department here, but my understanding of the way fire departments would manage a solar facility that is burning is basically they step back, meaning that there's there's heavy metals, there's other things in that there's not a lot of active firefighting that goes on. It's basically step back, let it go, and don't put themselves at risk. So it really, not to say that there's no firefighting that's done, but that it's not, from my perspective again, and we need to hear from the fire department, there's not a substantial change in terms of access there. The turnarounds still remain the same, turning radius, all of that is in the same in the Hammerhead. So that would be point one. And then point two would be the primary major concern with respect to abutters. And that is largely about setbacks from residential property lines. And within the project approvals, there's a requirement for a 150-foot minimum setback from any noise-generating equipment that would be from a residential property line. So again, if our equipment pad was here, we had a 150-foot setback from these residential properties, and now we still maintain that at this location, 150-foot setback from this residential property line. And for point of reference, when we're calling them noise-generating equipment, but an inverter typically is between 25 and 50 decibels. For point of reference, a refrigerator in your kitchen is probably about that range, a little bit higher. Background noise is generally considered about 20 decibels. Conversation that we're having here is probably in the 40, 45 decibel range. So the noise generating aspect is quite low. We're not asking you to look beyond that. We are saying that we're still in compliance with the 150-foot setback from residential, but just that a solar facility is a, obviously I'm not the abutter, but a solar facility can be considered a very good neighbor because there's not active operations in there beyond the once or twice a year mowing that might be required in there. And with that, I think that's probably a good point to stop. I'd be happy to point out any additional changes or other questions you'd like to discuss. Thank you for your time.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Go to board members for questions, comments, and just overall feelings on this. I'll lead it off. I don't really have any questions. I have a good understanding of the request. We had a very, very robust review at this board with heavy involvement from the public, including abutters and residents of this area. They were very vocal, rightfully so, due to the proximity to their homes. And I felt this board listened and responded well to them. And it's my opinion that the access road is directly related to safety and the transformer proximity to residents. For that to change, I would want to, I just feel a public hearing would be necessary for that. In my opinion, I would consider that to be a major modification and something that is deserving of a public hearing. I would like to share my comments on what I think about the modifications, but I don't think right at this second that's appropriate. I think we should go to the board first to see if we've got questions and our thoughts about whether it's a major or a minor modification. If we all as a board feel it is a major modification, at that point, I feel we should share our thoughts. Just, to offer that courtesy to the applicant, so that if the applicant feels that we're not feeling it, then maybe we don't waste our time. You know what I mean? I know it's expensive for you to put all this together, so we're going to offer you that transparency.
Thank you.
If it comes to that. Matt, questions, comments?
So in this red line, I can see the relocated transformers, but I don't see, I don't understand how the road configuration would terminate at that second transformer where you have the cursor is right now.
Sure.
My understanding is I'm looking at the original approved plan and it's marked up, right?
That's right.
Okay.
Yes, you're right, We have so the red line is are the
clouded areas?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
That's right. So the difference here, it's maybe easier to first talk about what had been. So we had there is a turnaround with, I don't recall quite what the radius is, but let's call it a 40-foot radius approximately. No, it couldn't have been a 40-foot. Let's call it a 30-foot radius for the turnaround that would have existed down here. So a vehicle would pull in straight and then back in and then out. And that same piece would exist now. A vehicle would pull in straight. The gate, the final gate would be located at this location, and then they would back into to this corner and then pull back out. So the same radius, same dimensions, everything would still exist. So in terms of turnaround capability, it's only location that has changed, not capability.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, so I guess my only concern would be making a decision on this without input from fire services.
And I believe we did receive a memo from them. Jim, can you outline that?
Yep. Yeah, you recently received an email that shares to the board. ComFire has reviewed this. This is in response to an email from me after the applicant had provided the plans with the updated plan as you see there. Although we appreciate his answers, we are not in favor of decreasing the emergency access road. There was much discussion on it when they first started this project, and we're going to stand firm and stick with the original plan. Thanks, Sean from ComFire.
And was he not the one that was involved originally? I believe he was.
It was either him or his partner, but I sent it to both of them for review.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you.
so my initial reaction then is that this is not a minor modification.
Okay. Michael?
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I also agree. I think this is we should have the public hearing, and also having the fire department in here should be very, very important on this. And I do agree with you, Matt. This is a major change. So.
Yeah, have the fire department present at the public hearing for questions, comments.
Absolutely.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. Mary?
I just, what is your purpose of making that change?
Primary would be just the two reasons. One, of the logistical challenge of being able to turn a vehicle around, halfway into the site as opposed to having to drive to the full rear of the facility. It is a bit of a difference.
But it cuts down on access, fire access to that. That's the widest portion of the lot, right? So it's cutting down on fire access from where you've got it now, which is the black box, all the way around to the other side. We miss the fire access, right? Is that
Well, I wouldn't say you miss it. The prior access distance would have been, the maximum distance would have been 424 feet, and now the maximum distance would be 502 feet. So it does reduce access some, but I'm not sure it reduces it substantially. Most of this facility, as an example, most of this facility is in that range of 400 plus. Right, so we don't have an access road that rings the entire facility, which could get us down in the 200 feet range. So it's the biggest distance we would have now would be the distance from the proposed end of project site to this corner.
Yeah.
Right. So the only real way to and I realize this isn't exactly what we're talking about, but if we were to try and reduce it substantially, you'd have to ring the entire site. Then you really have access from all sides. So, yeah.
That would be a great idea. I know it would be more, I get it.
Well, then that brings up the whole other abutter issues, right?
Right,
So
yep,
that
yep.
is, those are concerns for sure.
Okay, I do, especially in light of the comments from the chief, that it is a major issue, for me, anyway.
I understand.
Yeah, appreciate it, Mary. Thank you. Ray?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we have, as discussed, we went through an arduous process to come to the conclusions that we did. And I think one of the most important aspects of that was to take into account the concerns of the people that live there, okay? You were, in your discussion, I have to tell you, because we've walked that site more than once, and where the transformers are currently slated to be located, if you look at that, there's no houses up there. There's no houses there. If you're moving them, there are houses if it's moved where it's proposed. And that was a huge, huge discussion. And I have to say that given the time and the effort and the concerns, I can't see this as a minor change. This is definitely a substantial change.
Right.
Yeah, understood. Thank you, Ray. Appreciate that. Tim?
If I
no.
could, just a
Sorry, yeah.
quick follow-up question on
Go
that?
ahead, yeah.
Again, not to challenge you on this, but having not been involved in the original permitting process, with that last statement, I would have thought that then it might have been, say, from a residential building as opposed to a residential property line. I very much hear what you're saying about whether there's a home or not, but I was not aware of that as far as being how close it is to a house as opposed to the residential property line. So thank you for that.
Oh, and I just, Mr. Chairman, I was just reminded, did anybody ever check that cave to see if the coyotes were living in there?
I forgot about that.
We are in receipt of a wildlife study, yes.
Tim?
I'm sensing some history to this project.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
No, yeah.
Yeah.
Big time.
Do you mean to say I've stepped in something that I'm aware of? Okay, then.
A coyote hoe.
Yeah.
No, I agree with my fellow board members on some of the concerns, and especially seeing the COM Fire's response today on the access road and their concerns. I do agree that it would be a major mod and would be worthwhile of having a public hearing, advertised public hearing to come back here. The only other thing I was going to bring up is, changing the pad mounts and the transformer location. Wasn't there some specific, I don't know if it was in our zoning bylaw that kind of got written with this project in mind, and then the special permit, wasn't there some, or maybe I'm thinking back to the conversations during the special permit process, was the distance of those transformers to these drainage basins. Was there a minimum requirement on those? Because I'm looking at now, seeing that's closer to the edge of that drainage basin. And remember, we had like the super catch basin thing under the transformers?
So there's no distance from stormwater basin, but there is enhanced drainage systems required in the design of the transformer pads. I believe it's 110% of the liquids within the transformer must be able to be contained within the pad site. But there is distance from residential structures, and to Ray's point, the original approval was to move it of such substance that it was on the opposite side of
Okay,
the
that's
plan.
what I'm thinking. So there was, that tied to residential structures, and then with the drainage, and then we were talking about the water table and these catch basins and all that kind of stuff. So, but anyway, to summarize, yes, I agree that it would be a major mod.
Okay, appreciate that. Seeing that we're all in agreement that this would be a major modification prior to a motion, I just would like to offer you, our transparency and our thoughts about how that major modification hearing might go. For me, again, so much went into this. I felt that we reached a great compromise between the two sides, and I would not change a thing. I would not make any moves. I would not vote to reduce access at all, an inch. And I also would not make any vote that would move a transformer closer to a residential property. So that's me, just to let you know, just to give you that transparency.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah. Matt?
Yeah, I would agree with Steve.
Okay. Michael?
I agree with that also.
Mary?
Agreed.
Ray?
You did step in something.
Evidently.
Oh, Tim?
I agree.
All right. All right, we'll make our motion and we'll move along. So I move to find that the modifications proposed to special permit number 2023-02 at 810 Wakeby Road, Marston's Mills, are determined to be not in substantial conformance with the approved plan and shall require an amendment to the decision and a public hearing. Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ray. All those in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Matter's closed. Thank you,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you. Just a few closing words here.
Sure.
Obviously, there's not a lot of wiggle room here. I understand. I do want to say I appreciate the board's professionalism. It's actually very refreshing listening to the earlier processes that went through. It's nice working in a town that's got their stuff together. So thank you.
Wow.
Thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate that. Some general correspondence. We get a Chapter 91 notice and application for 365 Lakeside Drive West, CATS, to maintain a seasonal dock. I'm going to give Jim a minute. We're going to approve our minutes. Everybody get a chance to review the draft minutes for December 9th, 2024?
Yes.
Okay, and do we have a motion to approve?
I move we approve the minutes of December 9th, 2024.
Thank you, Matt. And a second?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. All those in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. The minutes are approved. Jim, you got a staff update for us?
Yeah, just a quick one. The local comprehensive planning committee is meeting on the 23rd of this month to begin to review a draft plan. So the full plan in its entirety, the first draft for them to review and offer red line comments. With the hope and anticipation of distribution probably towards the end of next month for full public comment. So that will be ongoing. We're also seeking funding through town council for an appropriation through CPC for a consultant to assist us with the open space and recreation plan. So we'll be hopefully starting that process very soon, and we'll certainly be engaging this board as well as others to get that update done in a timely manner. The housing production plan letter of recommendation was offered to town council, and they're considering next steps, and I'll certainly report back here. I did present to the town council regarding the Marston's Mills Elementary School former site this past Thursday, and I thought it was a really good conversation with our council. I will be presenting to the ad hoc housing committee on that subject to get some further guidance there, as well as I will be reaching out to the rec commission to get some guidance there and begin to formulate next steps to present to town council in the near future.
Very well done. Busy guy. Okay. Questions, comments for Jim?
Great job.
Yeah, great job. Awesome. Future meeting, January 27th, 2025, here at Town Hall at 7 p.m. Anything before we adjourn?
I will not be on the 27th. I will
Okay.
be
All right. No, Mary.
DC.
Got it. Anything else? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mary. In a second.
Second.
Thank you, Michael. All those in favor? Matt?
Aye.
Michael?
Aye.
Mary?
Aye.
Ray?
Aye.
Tim?
Aye.
And myself, Steve Robichaud, votes aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you so much.
Thank you.